From the Tory party conference once again in Manchester, the chief executive of the Northern Powerhouse Partnership, Henri Murison. Henri, cheers for making time for us. Good evening. We were just hearing there from Chancellor Jeremy Hunt, who in fact flew on a plane to Manchester to make his speech. I just want to get your reaction to that. Not only, of course, flying on a plane instead of taking a train or driving, but also to Manchester, where the final leg of HS2 could not reach.
I think it's obviously disappointing whenever people, when there is a train available, don't use it. I think the Chancellor had a meeting that he was concerned would potentially mean he couldn't get the train, but I think it would be better if he could have done. And then he could have experienced the fact that actually many of the trains from London are very congested. I was actually with the Times' transport reporter this morning. He was telling me how busy his train was on Sunday morning up to Manchester. That's not unusual. It's not just when party conference is on that there are many people travelling between this city and London, but also cities across the West Coast main line. And it's one of the reasons why we need extra capacity on our rail network. There are just not enough train spaces for the freight we'd like to get off motorways like the M6, for more commuter services in and out of cities like Manchester, and those fast trains to London. Because yes, the train from Manchester with HS2 will be slightly faster, but what's most important is there'll be more seats. And there'd also be the option to run a railway line from Liverpool to Leeds and on to the northeast, because at the moment HS2 provides a key element, 13 miles of track, that will allow trains coming from the west, from Warrington, Liverpool, across the Pennines.
Yeah, remind our viewers, because we're all very much in this as journalists, and certainly you in your job, into the trains and what's going on, but maybe the viewers can't quite keep track. Northern Powerhouse Partnership, sometimes called HS3, like it's High Speed 3. Give our viewers a sense of how damaging it could be if HS2 was actually cancelled on that northern leg to your project.
So the Times, actually a week ago today, reported how if you don't build HS2, the chief executive of Network Rail had warned the government's review a number of years ago. You'd have to add 15 billion more to Northern Powerhouse Rail, because actually to be able to go east to west, we were reusing bits of that north-south network, and the principal bit being that 13 miles of tunnel, basically, from Manchester Piccadilly down the road from where we are through to Manchester Airport. And the challenge is that obviously the government wants to not build HS2 and spend the money on, it sounds like from Rishi Sunak, potholes, despite the fact I know actually as Chancellor he cut the potholes budget. So I'm not sure I necessarily believe him that he'll do that. But anyway, I'll take him at his word for the purposes of this interview. The challenge with that is that, yes, you can go and spend money on other things, but if you still have to spend the 15 billion on Northern Powerhouse Rail, you actually don't save that much when you cancel the rest of HS2, because the challenge, and it's one of the reasons why HS2 is more expensive, as you alluded to, is tunnels, right? There's a lot of tunnels on phase one to keep Tory voters in places like Cheshire and Amersham happy. That was done for political reasons. Well, that puts the price of a tunnel 10 times more than just a normal stretch of railway. And it's the tunnelling bit of the remaining part of HS2 that we need for Northern Powerhouse Rail. So though it's only 13 miles, it makes up a lot more of the final budget than that distance would suggest. And so when you take away that 15 billion from what the government would save by cancelling HS2, the Prime Minister won't have as much money for potholes as he thinks he will. And that means that whatever promises he makes on Wednesday in his speech, if he does go ahead and announce this, obviously the Cabinet could stop him tomorrow in his tracks, because this will require a Cabinet decision. There might not be as much in the kitty, not as many sweeties in the jar as he was hoping to be able to offer in advance of a general election to try and buy a few votes in the north of England. But I'm not sure northern voters are going to be prepared to accept any of that when Northern Powerhouse Rail was at the centre of the Tory manifesto. And if it is cancelled, that is a massive blow to his electoral credibility.
Rather charitably choosing to take the government at their word, given we've heard so many different messages from the government on this over the last 24 hours. So let's just put it simply, Henri, do you trust the government on transport policy?
I'm afraid I don't trust Rishi Sunak. He and I met 6 years ago when he was a backbencher, and he told me Northern Powerhouse Rail was a brilliant idea. He would devote himself to campaigning for it. Now, as Prime Minister, he is going to cancel it on Wednesday, we understand. Absolutely disgraceful, because if you cancel HS2 and don't set aside that 15 billion, you may as well just give up on Northern Powerhouse Rail, because without that section in the middle, the line across the Pennines doesn't work for getting to Liverpool, doesn't work for Warrington, doesn't work to give people in the Yorkshire and the North East access to Manchester Airport. That's not good enough, and Northerners aren't going to stand for it.
Henri Murison, message received loud and clear. Thanks for talking to us.